WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively going to try to play a baseball season here, and I'm going to try to take it seriously. Luke Jones is at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. The Marlins are nowhere to be found, and Scott Miller is out on the West Coast doing all that he does as the national MLB columnist for Bleacher Report, Turner Sports. You can follow him at Scott Miller, BBL. He usually has good weather and sunshine. And now the Padres have those great uniforms throwing it back, Scott. So you at least have that when you're socially distanced in San Diego. But this has been, since the last time we got together, just an incredible mess for all of us, but certainly for Major League Baseball, a crisis management unlike any other.
Yeah, it is. And, I think so many people are glad to see baseball back on the field and to have games to watch at home with so many people at home these days. It's a nice change. But, the Marlins outbreak certainly was a reminder of the very serious nature of what baseball is trying to do and of the, coronavirus basically remaining uncontrolled in this country and, continuing to be a moving target.
Well, the Marlins is a cautionary tale, right? I think there will be stories written about this, and only they know the truth of where they went and who they were with and how they contracted this. But this is the most contagious pathogen in the history of our lifetimes. Some places it's been taken more seriously than others. I've told the cautionary tale of going to the beach with my wife a couple of weeks ago down in North Carolina, and no one seemed to have even own a mask or even have heard of owning a mask or thinking it's a hoax or whatever it is. The political thing aside, if they want to stay on the field, they have to stay clean. And clearly whatever happened with the Miami Marlins over the weekend, and certainly Sunday after you have dirty test and decision-making, I like Don Mattingly. He was always great to me 30 years ago when he was a player. I think everybody in the sport likes Don Mattingly, but liking a guy and thinking these people really understand the science of a pathogen, we're really having a disconnect on that side of things. I think from science to application from human beings trying to go earn a living, quite frankly.
Yeah, and it's not even all in Don Mattingly's hands. I mean, obviously the manager, the leaders of a team are in charge of making sure that health protocols are followed. But, I thought what happened Sunday morning when the Marlins got tests back and tested positive, and then we learned they decided to play Sunday in Philadelphia. They had a clubhouse discussion. I mean, that should have never even happened. There should be a protocol where when positive tests come back, somebody at the league is notified and the league decides whether a game is played, not the players or the individual teams, because, what else are they going to decide? They're at the ballpark. It's a Sunday morning. They've got a game to play. They're going to vote to play.
Well, yeah, that should come as no shock to anyone. Where are the doctors involved? You know what I mean? That's the issue for me. And as the Ravens open their building and we start to see Lamar Jackson on Zoom and John Harbaugh, this is a cautionary tale for all of them as to how they're running their operation, how they're running their building. And then more than that for the baseball players, every airport, every bus, every meal, every takeout, every person they touch, how they're getting to the ballpark, all of that, who's driving the bus for them to the ballpark, all of that became sort of what baseball writers were trying to trail around in the aftermath of Philadelphia and Sunday, right?
Yeah, and that's what the baseball's biggest challenge in trying to play through this was always going to be when teams went on the road, because, we've all heard so much about the NBA is playing in that bubble down in Orlando. And, baseball decided not to play in a bubble. And I get it. There are several reasons why, starting with, 30-man rosters plus support staff. There's so many more people involved in baseball than there is on a basketball team. So it's hard to quarantine all those people within a bubble, 30 teams times all that personnel. Plus, the NBA can play games on that court down there day and night. Baseball, you try to play 5 games on one field in one day, the field's going to wear out. I mean, it's not going to be able to maintain. So I understand certainly why baseball opted to do it the way it is, but that means when teams leave their home and go on the bus to the airport, get on the plane, go to the hotel, handle the hotel room keys. They're in the different city. What are you going to eat? You're going to go out to eat. All of that, that's all stuff that makes it more difficult to figure out and to keep guys safe.
Scott Miller is here. He can be found out on Twitter at Scott Miller BBL. He's written a book called 90% Mental that we'll talk about a little later. In trying to evaluate the sport and what has happened to the minor leagues, and certainly for the Baltimore Orioles, and the promise of the future was all about Adley Rutschman and being bad and getting high picks and then getting him into the system and giving him baseball training. What they did basically in Houston before the cheating all happened. For the Orioles in just one little silo, for what the grand plan to become a vibrant organization again, this has really been devastating, right? I mean, to not be able to have young players on the field, to give them instruction, to sort of take a year off amidst all of this. And this is not just an Oriole problem, it's an industry problem, but also college baseball, high school baseball, around the world, really, where there's going to be sort of a setback to the game here to some degree because no one's been able to play it.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a hardship for all of us in so many different areas, and no question within baseball. And you're right, the teams like the Orioles that are following that model where they strip down at the big league level and rebuild and funnel young talent into their system, it's bad timing right now. There's no question. I mean, no fault of the Orioles. We've seen other teams do it before. Houston Astros and Chicago Cubs started the trend a few years back, and we've seen other teams, including you mentioned the Padres at the top of the interview. The Padres did similar a couple years ago, and they fed young players like Fernando Tatis Jr. into their system, and they developed them, and here they are. And you're right, where the Orioles are concerned right now, they opted down a path that other clubs have taken, but then here comes the pandemic. So there's, as you said, no minor league baseball. There's no instruction going on. And for young players, that the only way you get better is by playing. And in baseball especially, you need that repetition. You need all those at-bats in a minor league season to develop and to figure yourself out. Pitchers need to develop. I don't know what's going to happen next year. I mean, all the minor league pitchers that are sidelined right now, you talk about innings limits and watching pitch counts, their progression of developing and getting stronger is interrupted right now. And same at the major league level. I mean, major league pitchers going to get 11 or 12 starts this year, most likely. And they'll probably throw maybe 100 innings this year. I don't know how even, the big guys come back next year that are and throw anywhere close to 200 innings after just throwing 90 or 100 this year.
Well, and I more than that, judging all of this, right? Like having evaluation of players in small pieces and trying to keep these guys focused on baseball and keeping them clean and how quickly they ramp up. Certainly these next couple of weeks, I mean, the Orioles are sort of a prime example of winning a couple of ball games over the weekend. Had there been forfeits, which is what I sort of was working under the assumption of, if you start to pee dirty and you miss games, and I thought this in the NFL, that you would just forfeit the game. I mean, it'd be like Little League, if you can't get your team on the field, you just take an L and we move on. I thought that would really screw with the sanctity of whatever they're trying to achieve for postseason to keep some integrity. for the level of competition, across the board, if teams are to go out, it appears now that if the Marlins only play 43 games or whatever, they'll go to some sort of percentage. I mean, they're making this up as they go along. And for as much as the players have fought with the owners for like all of our lifetime, Scott, just the fact that they're on the field and they're moving around and the Yankees said, yeah, we'll get on the bus and go to Baltimore. That's not the way this usually used to work, right?
No, it's not. But and you're right, by the way, winning percentage will be the thing. Baseball, I think this week realized it's going to be really hard to have every team play 60 games and have a symmetrical, even schedule. You're going to have some teams play 60, some may play 58. Marlins, maybe they play 54 or whatever, or 50.
Hell, when you get everybody to the field, it still might rain.
Right. Well, that too. Yeah. So, there is precedent. It hasn't happened often, but precedent for divisions to be decided by winning percentage. Strike of 1981, I think, was one year where not everybody played the same number of games. So you're gonna have that. But yeah, you're right. Baseball, by flip-flopping the schedule and all of a sudden the Yankees go to Baltimore on a Wednesday and a Thursday instead of the Marlins, I think, this happening this early in the season shows that baseball was always going to have to be nimble, and it's just a fluid situation this year. It's what it is. And, in terms of the integrity of the schedule or integrity of the game, baseball is doing the best it can. But I would say, we knew going in, everything's going to have to be graded on the curve this year, because once the pandemic hit and then we got to the circumstances we're in now where baseball's like, okay, the best we can do, we're going to go 60 games. It's not like you're going to be able to compare this season to any other season. Mike Trout, whatever his numbers are this year, the beauty of baseball is we know a lot of times you can look at a Mike Trout season and compare it to Mickey Mantle's numbers in 1952. We knew with 60 games, none of that, all that's out the window. Whatever Mike Trout does this year, you can't compare those numbers to any other year with just a 60-game season. So, that's why, as a old-time baseball guy, normally I would be kicking and screaming about the runner on second base to start extra innings. And I hope that doesn't continue into a 162-game season. For a 60-game season, it's pretty much, look, whatever it takes to get the game on the field. Anything that's played this year is a bonus. So if it takes all of a sudden the Yankee players voting to say, should we switch midstream in the middle of the week and go play in Baltimore, and credit to the Yankees for doing that, that's what it's going to take to get through the season. And, it's a shame, but not a shame for baseball, but just a shame for our country that we're in this situation this spring and this summer. And I think, baseball, like the rest of us, it's totally different. We have to look at it where whatever situation we're in, you got to make the best of it and just try to power through and hope for better days ahead.
Find him. You can find Scott Miller out on Twitter, and you can find him on the television sometimes. Certainly find him on the interweb at Bleacher Report and Turner Sports, and it's Scott Miller, BBL. You said something about anything we get on the field, we're sort of lucky to have it and all of this and where the country is. And I am really concerned about the future, right? About the way they've negotiated, about where the minor leagues are, where they're getting their players from, all of the issues they have about aging, pace of play, and distribution, and certainly in our marketplace where the ownership is sort of upside down. Scott, we're in year 29 of a 30-year lease for Camden Yards, and the owner's son lives in Nashville, and they have minority ownership. There's all sorts of moving tectonic plates in Oakland, Tampa, and in other places, Montreal, and other places where they want baseball, Portland, where they have all sorts of issues out there now. But when all of this settles out 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, The Orioles are going to have to compete with the Nationals. They're going to have a new lease. There's going to have to be a new day and dawning of people coming to games, not just here but in other places. I mean, I had Bob Ryan and Dan Shaughnessy on last week, and I know you know those guys well from Boston. We're going up to Fenway Park, and they're telling me how the Red Sox have become a distant number 2 to the Patriots, and maybe even on any given day, the Celtics can be a bigger brand than the Red Sox in Boston, and the Red Sox are mailing this one in and the bets thing and all that's going on with them. But I mean, in places like Boston where it matters, and Chicago, New York, out in California where you are at this point, new stadium in Dallas, new-ish stadium in Atlanta, I'm worried about 5 years from now for my city, for the sport, and for the overall general where is the sport going to be. This has been a really, really inopportune time for this to happen to baseball specifically.
Yeah, it has. I mean, there's no question baseball's elbowing for space in the national sports landscape. And you know, I mean, it was, again, speaking as a lifetime baseball guy, you know, I think everything was better back in the day when baseball was the national pastime and the true number one sport in the land. And then NFL passed it. And now in the last several years, you know, the NBA's blowing by baseball and you know, baseball's got some things to figure out. I mean, you know, Rob Manfred said when he replaced Bud Selig as commissioner, one of his first things he has to do is make sure the game reconnects with the younger demographic and hooks young fans and keeps them. And, you know, I mean, that's just as true today. I mean, there are some major challenges for baseball. You laid a lot of them out, the stadium situations. You know, I think part of the issue is competitive integrity. And what I mean by that phrase, it goes back to what we were talking about a little while ago with the Orioles following the Astros and the Cubs. And every year, clubs, you know, you've got a couple of clubs, 2, 3, that are basically tanking the year. You mentioned the Red Sox essentially are doing that this year when they traded Mookie Betts away and made some of the moves they made. And when that happens, you know, the local fan base, you know, I mean, it's like, why should they pay attention when they, in a particular city, when they know their team is not competitive, and not only that, but has opted to be non-competitive. So, I mean, that's, to me, one of the big issues baseball has to figure out is how do they discourage this from happening. You know, I mean, it's the major leagues. It's not a minor league.
Well, a lot of this happened 30 years ago, right, when they couldn't figure out money, where you have $200 million teams, the $50 million teams, and the only way in the modern era to get good is to tank, literally, right? Like that's right. You have to that's sort of written into the new code. And old guys like you and me remember, like, that just was from a gentleman's perspective in the game of baseball. You know, Bill Veeck and Charlie Finley and George Steinbrenner were never going to not be competitive. They didn't have Donald Sterling in them, right? Like, that was the way the game was built.
Right. Yeah, no question. And, yeah, so now, and we saw the money stuff come up in this negotiation this summer where, you know, the owners offered a percentage of whatever revenues they made. And, you know, the players historically have fought for the free market system, and they have never accepted a salary cap. And the finances in baseball are different anyway. In the NFL, for example, all the teams get the same amount of money because there's, you know, all the TV and radio rights go into the general pool. There's no local TV rights in football, whereas, you know, in baseball, you know, the Yankees and the Cubs get so many more millions from their local TV deals than the other teams, and then, you know, then they don't want to share it with everybody, and so then you end up with what you just laid out. You know, Nestor, you get clubs that, you know, have, you know, giant payrolls of 180 million, and you've got clubs with 50 million payrolls, and, you know, that's still out there. And you know, my biggest hope is that maybe they could learn, so the players and owners learned a few lessons from the rancorous negotiations this summer, and when they jump back into it here pretty quickly to negotiate the next collective bargaining agreement, which is up after the 2021 season, that maybe some lessons will be learned from this summer, and they'll figure out a better path for the next collective bargaining agreement. And maybe they can share some more money and work things out a little better than it's been, because the game needs it.
Scott Miller can be found at Bleacher Report and Turner Sports, as well as on Twitter at Scott Miller BBL. No one covering a game of baseball better. Plug your book, dude. 90% Mental. I mean, hell, we didn't have any baseball for 6 months. It was a summer, pool, maybe a little social distancing. I mean, not a bad time to read a book or two or three, right? We could all use a little education.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. Just came out in paperback this spring. So available, as they say, wherever books are sold. You can order it on, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You get it at the bookstores, if they're open near you. But, Bob Tewksbury pitched in the majors for 12 years. St. Louis Cardinals, Texas Rangers, Minnesota Twins, several others. Carved out a really good career for a guy with pretty mediocre stuff. And a lot of the way he did it, he had to outthink hitters. And so when he finished, he became a mental skills coach. He was with the Red Sox in that capacity for 12 years, San Francisco Giants for 2. He's currently mental skills coach of the Chicago Cubs. He and I collaborated on the book. It's partly his career and how he did what I just described. Part of it is the guys he's coached, John Lester of the Cubs, Anthony Rizzo, Rich Hill now with the Minnesota Twins, but he's been around. Those are kind of some you would almost say characters in the book. They all were helped greatly by Tukes. They were all gracious with their time interviewing and explaining some of the stuff they learned from him. And, a mental skills guide, not just in baseball, but, I've had people tell me it's helped their golf game, and it's helped them just in life in general, because especially these days, we got a lot of stuff coming at us. Seems like sometimes from a fire hose, and we all can use a little, some lessons and tricks on how to stay positive and deal with things when things start to go south.
Well, I'll tell you what, I got to get Tukes on the show. I've never had the honor or the privilege, but I know my wife would be a big fan because she's from New Hampshire, and he's a New Hampshire guy. So, all the Granite Staters sort of stick together. So I know he still lives up there. We'll probably compare some tenders at the back room or whatnot, or some meals up there. We will definitely plug that. You can find the book, 90% Mental, and it's written along with Bob Tewksbury, an all-star player turned mental skills coach reveals the hidden game of baseball. Sounds like something my man Luke Jones would dig. Scott, always a pleasure. I am so sorry we don't bump into each other, rub elbows, and do all-star games and postseasons, and you're not on the East Coast that much, and I don't get to San Diego since they took your football team away. But I had Stones tickets, dude. I was going to the Murph, first night of the tour, back in May. I was going to revisit all my old Aunt Jane tricks out at San Diego State and College Avenue and El Cajon and Montezuma and get back to San Diego. And then the Stones cancel on me. So, I don't know. At some point, I'll get out there and visit the Tony Gwynn statue sometime soon. We'll be able to put a mask on and watch some baseball. But when I do, I know those Padres jerseys are going to look awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting to flip back to brown and gold this year, and I like them. They've gotten real good reviews, and it's kind of funny watching them in brown again. But entertaining. Well,
take care of yourself. Enjoy the good weather out there, and stay safe. We'll see you soon. Okay.
You as well, Nestor. Thank you, and talk soon.
Appreciate you. Scott Miller, longtime insider, Major League Baseball, doing a book, and, of course, out on Twitter all the time. It's Scott Miller, BBL, National Major League Baseball columnist for Bleacher Report, Turner Sports, longtime writer, serious MLB. He's everywhere. He's also with Fox Sports San Diego as well, and seeing those good-looking. If the Orioles can't be any good for the next 8 weeks, I do have a Padres jersey. I do have my Tony Gwynn jersey in the closet, and I do have my Padres spring training hat from Peoria, so they'll be my number 2 in August and September for baseball. Find me, Nasty, at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Calm, local, Baltimore positive, just like Scott Miller plugged, and WNST.net AM 1570, where we used to always talk sports. Now we sort of talk about whatever we want.